You are joining Making a Difference with Melissa Clark, a show that shares the compelling stories and voices of well-known and everyday people who change the world in big and small ways. Enjoy our guests, call in, or just listen to be inspired. For this show was made with you in mind. Please join us every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with our special guests. And you can listen to our recast at www.melissaclarkshow.com.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us on Making a Difference. I'm Melissa Billy Clark. Please head over to the previous episode where we learned about comedian, host, and author Jeffrey Gurian. This week, we interview him for Preferred Health Magazine's Fall Edition. We get into stuttering. The term for stuttering is child onset fluency disorder. In my research, 20% of children will start stuttering when they are learning to talk. However, before they are 4 or 5, 75% will outgrow it. It is more common in boys than girls. You started stuttering at the age of 12. Tell us how this developed.
Okay, I actually started stuttering at the age of 6 or 7.
Pardon, okay.
And I stuttered through my 20s and beyond that. Even after I was a doctor, I was blocking on certain words.
Okay.
And it was the bane of my existence. I realized, I remember very clearly being in high school and they called on me to answer. And in those days, you had to stand by your desk to answer a question if the teacher asked you a question. And literally nothing came out. I couldn't get a word out. And I remember just turning red with embarrassment and having to sit down again. And I was determined that I was going to fix it because no one was able to help me. My parents sent me for speech therapy and it didn't work. It actually made me worse, being surrounded by other kids who stuttered. It made me feel like there was something wrong with me. And I realized one day that I didn't stutter when I was alone. I only stuttered when I was trying to talk to somebody else, which gave me the grace to figure out you can't have a disability based on your location.
Right.
A man with a limp limps in every room of his house. He can't go into a room and close the door and walk perfectly. But if I could go into a room by myself and speak better, then it means that theoretically there's nothing wrong with me. When I went to college, I made myself run for the president of the freshman class. And I told myself that if I could win the election, I wouldn't have to stutter anymore because I had a feeling it had something to do with how I felt about myself. I was 2 years younger than everybody. I started college when I was 16 years old. So I was like 14 in high school. I was very young and I looked kind of immature and I never really felt like I fit in, despite the fact that other people treated me as if I was popular. Like in high school, they used to have this thing, the prettiest girl, the handsomest guy. So they voted me most talented because I played the piano and I played the drums. And so theoretically, I was popular. But if you don't feel it, it doesn't really matter.
Sure.
So when I get to college and I run for president, and I can't say my name. I could never say Jeffrey Gurian. Most stutterers have a hard time saying their own name, because your name is your identity. And if you're not happy with who you are, it's very hard to tell people who you are. So I had to have other kids introduce me to kids I didn't know and say, vote for this guy, he's running for president. And once I got some words out, I could speak, but I was stuttering. Turns out, so I win the election. I'm the president of the freshman class of Hunter College.
Yay!
Right? And I still stuttered. And it was a great lesson for me. It was one of my first great lessons. It taught me that outside validation doesn't work in life. It doesn't matter how many people compliment you and tell you that you're wonderful and talented and gorgeous and fabulous. It matters what you think of yourself.
That's correct.
And it started me on a journey because I was determined to cure myself. And I worked on myself for many years and I developed techniques of thought. I realized that I was holding thoughts that were not valid for me, as many of us are. And we're holding thoughts that hold us back. I call them heart wounds. And it's one of the things that led to my first book on happiness. I wrote this book. I hope you don't mind me holding it up, but
Please.
it's called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind.
Yes.
A spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness. And do you have any idea how hard it is to get a dog to sit in lotus position, meditating on an orange pillow?
It's one of my two favorite things.
Right, I know. That's why I thought you would resonate with this book, because there's a dog on it. And you know, dog is God spelled backwards.
That is correct.
It's a very powerful image, which is one of the reasons why people love dogs so much.
Yes.
So I was determined to cure myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a lot of work on my mind. I basically took my mind apart and to examine my thoughts, which is not an easy process. Each one of us are holding thoughts that are not valid for us. If you've ever been bullied, or, you know, since you're a child, anytime someone has hurt your feelings or broke a promise to you or hurt you in some way, we keep that inside of us. Yeah. And I call it, in your heart chakra, and I call them heart wounds. And they affect your self-esteem, and they affect your self-confidence, and they affect every decision you make in your life. Because every time you're called upon to make a decision, you use your thoughts to figure out what to do, right? Who else's thoughts can you use? You think about what you should do. But if your thoughts are not valid, your decisions are not going to work for you. And my thoughts told me that I needed to stutter. I look at stuttering as a habit that's related to stress. Mm-hmm. And usually most kids start stuttering after they've been speaking okay for several years. You know, in this country alone, they say there's more than 3 million people who stutter, but it affects their families. It affects the people that they don't meet. It affects the jobs that they never get because they're too embarrassed to speak to people. And so, as you can see, I no longer stutter. Yeah. And I consider it one of my greatest accomplishments. And now I work with people all over the world, and I teach them how not to stutter. And it's a very dedicated process.
So are you saying that trauma brings on stuttering? Trauma can bring on stuttering?
Well, here's the thing. You know, I tell everybody, I'm not a speech pathologist. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you what my experience has been. The spiritual nature is that we're all the same. We all have the same 46 chromosomes. We have the same throat, speaking mechanism, the same muscles of our face. I didn't do magic. It's not like, I called a famous stuttering institute down south to offer my help. And I got the head of the institute on the phone, probably because I said, it's Dr. Gurian calling. I don't often use the doctor thing, but sometimes you have to get somebody on the phone. They're like, why is the doctor calling me, right?
Sure.
And I told him my story about that I was a severe stutterer and that I'd like to be of help to him if I could, because I no longer stutter. And I think I have information that could help people, because stuttering ruins people's lives. Yeah. And he had the nerve to say to me, no one's ever been cured of stuttering. And I was so shocked. And I said to him, look, I'd have to be a pathological liar to call you up and make up a story that I stuttered very badly and now I don't anymore. And he couldn't open his mind to it. So I'm always grateful for a show like yours that allows me to speak about it, because people need to know that you can get better. There are probably some types of stuttering. Like someone contacted me recently and I had to say to him, I don't think I can help you, because he said he was autistic and his stuttering seemed to be neurological. Yes. I never heard anyone stutter the way he stuttered. And, I had to be honest with him. I don't tell people that I can help them if I don't think I can.
Right.
And it wouldn't be honest. But when I said I'm not a speech pathologist, it doesn't mean you have to have a heart attack to be a cardiologist.
Correct. I'm not a therapist, but I've been through life experiences. I'm not a grief counselor, but I've buried 2 parents. So I know that's my experience and what helps me. And perhaps little things that we talk about can help others open up their mind. I mean,
exactly.
PhD in it. So, you mentioned that you were a stutterer alone. So in your experience, what your clients do, a lot of people say that to you? Like when I'm in my room by myself, I stutter, but when I'm around other people, I'm okay?
No, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite.
The opposite. When they're alone, they don't stutter. And that's the thing that I use to decide whether I can help them or not.
Sure.
I have a website. It's called StopStutteringNowGurian.com. StopStutteringNowGurian.com. And there are testimonials on there from people that I've helped. And one of the things that I say is, if you read this website And if you speak better when you're by yourself than you do when you're talking to other people, then there's a good chance that my techniques can help you. You can never guarantee it. It depends on how hard somebody is willing to work. I was literally obsessed with stopping stuttering. I probably have a little bit of OCD, you know, obsessive compulsive,
I know all about that.
Disorder. Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of us have it. And
Yeah.
it's not a terrible thing if you can use it to your benefit.
Sure.
Like I used it, you know, if I'm doing something, like if I get a thought in my mind, sometimes I can't let it go for days. I can obsess about a particular thought, but I've learned to control my mind. And basically, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between fact and fiction, which I find fascinating.
Yes.
If you tell yourself that you're a loser, that's what you're going to draw into your life. If you tell yourself that you're a winner, you're going to draw that into your life. It's the power behind the power of positive thinking.
You wrote a couple of books about that. We're going to get into that. I want to go a little bit more in depth with the stutter.
Sure.
So 6 or 7, what happened when you first, or did mom or dad tell you you're having a problem right now with your speech, or?
No, I don't remember my parents saying anything, but you know, what I tell people that I work with is we may never figure out exactly what the cause was, and it's not important to do that, but it is important to look at all the possibilities.
Okay.
So I have a very long questionnaire that they have to fill out because it has to do with, you know, most people start stuttering when they're little kids. And who are you with most of the time? You're with your family, you're with your parents. So it has to do something with the dynamic in the household. Now, I came from 2 very loving, very supportive parents, but my mom was a perfectionist. And I used to ask her, like she would dress me and comb my hair, you know, a certain way. And I was the neatest kid in college. I wore the neatest army jacket in college. I never got a stain on me. I wouldn't get dirty for anything, you know, and it was like, so when children want to rebel, you can't talk back to your parents. At least you couldn't when I was growing up. These days, you don't know what kids do, but in those days, you couldn't talk back to your parents. And one way to get even with someone is to develop something that demands attention. And I look at stuttering as a way of saying, oh, you want me to be perfect? I'll show you how imperfect I could be. I won't even be able to speak properly. So we develop things that are like self-sabotage, things to hold us back. Because if you're stuttering, very often you don't get the job you like, and you don't speak to the man or woman that you're attracted to because you're self-conscious about your speech. It's very embarrassing to be stuttering because people don't know how to react to you. They don't know what to do. If you're talking to somebody who's stuttering to you, you feel helpless. Some people try to fill in a word for them or help them out, which is not a good thing to do, but nobody really knows how to treat it. It's very awkward. So
are you saying that you developed this on your own, or?
Yeah, I look at it as a stress-related habit, the same way that people bite their nails or they develop a nervous twitch or a blink. Some children, no one ever decides and says, I think I should start stuttering. It's a subconscious choice. And the process is to release. When I talk about healing your heart, it's not about a heart attack. It's about releasing the pains that we're carrying from childhood that make you stutter. So that when you're stuttering for someone and you're giving away all your power. So I teach people self-confidence and self-esteem to take back the power. I can feel nervous, but I'm not going to stutter for you. There's no one on this earth. And I still get triggers after all these years. I can be in a group of people, and if it's a meeting and not everybody knows each other, and the leader of the meeting says, you know what, let's go around the room and say our names really quickly. Man, my hands start to sweat and I get a knot in my stomach because I always stuttered on my name.
Yeah.
And I look at each person and I say, am I going to stutter for them? Am I going to allow them to make me feel so less than that I'm going to stutter? And the answer is always no. And I don't stutter. And when someone wants me, or says, who wants to go first? My hand shoots up. I volunteer. That's another thing I teach people. Don't wait till the last person and let the nervousness build up. You know your name. You know your name since you're 2 years old. You don't have to worry. You just raise your hand and you speak. So when I was in college, I volunteered for speech classes, not therapy, but to give speeches. And I never stuttered. And the other kids were amazed. Like, how'd you do that? It's like an actor getting a script. I became the person who didn't stutter.
Right.
That just shows you that if you can control your mind, if you make your mind strong enough, you can conquer many things in this world.
So is there involuntary stuttering? Is there a such thing as someone who has no control over it and they weren't nervous as a child? And
no, all stuttering is involuntary. You don't have control over it, but you can take control.
okay.
You can learn to control your mind. Affirmations are very important.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I use to reprogram your brain. When you've been stuttering for many years, you really believe that there's something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been stuttering for 20 years, you can't stop stuttering in a couple of months. You can only stop stuttering when you've convinced your subconscious mind that there's really nothing wrong with you and you no longer have the need to stutter, which is a strange concept for people. They'd be like, what do you mean I need to stutter?
Yeah.
You're fulfilling some kind of inner need. When you're stuttering, you're going back to that childhood. You're becoming that child who felt nervous and insecure for whatever reason. It doesn't matter the reason. You're not stuttering as an adult. Something triggers you and you revert to that child who used to stutter, and you're still stuttering as an adult. And when I tell people, look, if you started stuttering when you were 7, you had a 7-year-old mind. Now you're 35. Would you live your life according to a choice you made when you're 7? Would you have the same friends? Would you pick the same girl you liked when you were 7? Would you like the same music when you're 7? All those answers are no. Nobody's going to live with a choice they made when they were 7, when you're 30 or 40 or 50.
Yeah, but my question to you is, are you saying that it was a choice at the age of 7 to have a stuttering problem?
Subconscious choice.
Subconscious choice.
Yeah, never a conscious choice. No one would ever say, I think I should start stuttering now.
Sure.
It's a subconscious choice that you don't realize you're making. It's a reaction to whatever is going on in your life that you're not comfortable with. Something is happening. Sometimes a parent leaves, someone dies, and a child is in shock, and they start stuttering because they need more attention.
Yeah.
Because when you're stuttering, a parent will definitely give you more attention, and some children need that. But you're supposed to outgrow it. So stutterers who are adults are holding on to all those negative thoughts. So the essence of my work is to learn to release those negative thoughts by exposing them, first of all, by talking about them and realizing that they can no longer have power over you, that you have to let them go. It's like, it's like resentment. I don't know if you heard this, but resentment is like you taking poison, expecting the other person to die. When people hurt you, the way to get even with them is to let them go from your consciousness.
Yeah.
Ignore them completely, erase them from your consciousness. When you're thinking about them all the time, they're still damaging you.
Yes.
You're giving them so much power over you. And people hurt us all the time throughout our lives. There are people who betray us, who do things that we would never expect.
Yes.
You know, everyone who's divorced was once married, right? You can't, you can't get divorced unless you were married first.
Right.
And we know, you know, everyone starts out being married, hoping it's going to last forever. And we see that things happen. Sometimes it doesn't work out. So those are wounds that we're carrying that we need to release. When you get those wounds as a child, one of the possibilities of dealing with it is starting to stutter.
Yeah.
And so that's the essence of my work, is teaching them how to release those pains, those painful memories, and realize that it's no longer a valid choice for them, that they no longer have to stutter, that it's okay for them to be fluent.
Yeah.
And I get amazing results from people. And it's very rewarding for me because it hurts me when I hear people stuttering.
Yeah.
I have all those triggers inside of me, you know, and I could start stuttering tomorrow, but I refuse to. I'll never stutter.
You said that you still feel the urge of it.
I get the triggers. But because I've learned to control my mind, I will not let myself stutter. There's a power. We all have power. Some things we're powerless over. Like I do a lot of work with people in 12-step programs that teaches you that you're powerless over alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm not powerless over stuttering. If any of your listeners know the Serenity Prayer, it's very powerful. Yeah. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, which is the most important line, And
Yes.
if I wasn't given the grace to know the difference, I'd still be stuttering today.
Right.
But I realized that I don't have to accept my stutter because it isn't real. I created it. And anything I create, I can uncreate. That's a very important thing for people to know. Just because you think something doesn't make it real.
Right.
You know, we tend to believe our thoughts. If you have any intelligence, you think your thoughts are true. But it doesn't have to be that way. So you have to learn to question your thoughts. And if you look at yourself in a negative way, I think what I had to do was take what must have been an inferiority complex and turn it into a superiority complex, not to feel better than other people, but just to feel even, just to feel that I was good enough to show up. And I think that's one of the reasons why people come to me on red carpets and stuff, because they feel a comfortable energy. People have told me that.
Yeah.
So much of it is about energy.
That's right. And you've been a healer. So I just wanted, let's wrap up stuttering, because you do help a lot of people. Where can people find you, once again, to get help for stuttering if they're having an issue with it?
Right. I have a website dedicated to stuttering, and it's called, you know, www.stopstutteringnow.Gurian, Gurian.com. Stopstutteringnow.Gurian.com. There's a lot of information on there. There's testimonials. There's an audio testimonial and video testimonials of people that I've worked with. And then they can email me afterwards if they're interested in learning more about it. And then I offer a complimentary, like 10 or 15-minute phone call just to answer some questions if they have any.
To see if it works with you. Can you provide us with your email address?
Sure. It's Jeffrey@jeffreygurian.com.
Okay.
Jeffrey, Jeffrey@jeffreygurian.com.
Thank you so much for making a difference and sharing your experience with people and helping them organically. I think this is, you know, the best way to do it.
Well, you know what? Sometimes life gives us obstacles to overcome.
Yeah.
And the purpose is not to feel like you're the ultimate victim of the universe, but if you can overcome that, it's so that you can go on to help other people.
Yes. And we thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. And Jeffrey will be in Preferred Health Magazine this fall's edition. So now let's get into spirituality. This is my favorite topic because I am an empath, and I believe I'm a healer because I've had a lot of people tell me that. So you are a spiritualist, and you've been a healer since how old?
When I was just a child, when I was 7 or 8 years old, I already knew that I could take away pain, certain pain, not every pain. I was just a little kid with my hands. And if my sister had pain, I would just automatically take it away. And you know, as I grew up, I used it all the time. And when I became a dentist, my specialty was treating headaches. I was a professor at N.Y.U. in oral medicine and oro-facial pain, a clinical professor. And I was there for 12 years. And they saw me in the clinic taking away headaches from people, just using my hands, no injections, no drugs, or anything like that. Because people who are stressed out, and especially this past year with the pandemic, we've been living with so much stress. A lot of dentists are reporting that patients are coming in with broken and cracked teeth. And it's from clenching and grinding their teeth. So many people clench and grind their teeth that don't know it. In this country alone, there's more than 150 million people who suffer with what they think are migraine headaches, that are really what they call musculoskeletal headaches, that come from clenching and grinding the teeth. And it gives you a lot of symptoms that you wouldn't be aware of. For instance, if you wake up in the morning and your neck hurts, and your neck is tight and stiff and achy, or your back, your shoulders hurt, the last person in the world you would think to tell would be your dentist.
But yes.
Why would you ever tell your dentist that your neck hurts? It wouldn't occur to people.
Right.
And that's one of the main symptoms of grinding, because the muscles of the jaw connect in here. This is the temporomandibular joint, which they call TMJ. If you put your fingers here and you open and close your mouth, you'll feel the joint moving. It's what allows us to open and close. Those muscles connect into the temple region, they connect in the back of your head in the occipital region, and they actually go into the shoulders in the trapezius region. So like when you go to the gym, if you do too much exercise and you get sore muscles, you get like a Charlie horse, you can feel it. But when it happens in your head, that's what causes headaches. Because like, have you ever had a cramp in your calf?
Always.
Right. So you know how painful that is. It's a fleshy muscle.
Scary.
It's
scary.
a fleshy muscle, and you know when it's happening because it tightens up. Well, your head feels like it's bone, but it's really bone covered by a very thin layer of muscles. They're not fleshy muscles. They're pulled tight over your head. But inside every muscle are nerves and blood vessels. And so when the muscle in your head tightens up, it clenches down on the blood vessels. And that's where the pounding headache comes from. If you can picture, I don't know if you ever see these clowns, they blow up these long water balloons. All right, so if you had a water balloon and you squeezed it in the middle, the water would shoot out to the sides.
Yeah.
That's what happens in your head. You squeeze down on the blood vessel, which is like a water balloon, and the blood shoots out to the sides, and you wind up with a pounding headache.
Interesting.
And some people get frontal headaches. Some people get them from behind. Some people think they're sinus headaches, but they can become suicidal because the headaches can become so bad. And unfortunately, it very often goes undiagnosed because a lot of MDs are not familiar with the symptoms, and a lot of dentists don't check for it. So that became my specialty when I taught at N.Y.U, and they had me lecture to all the doctors, and then the TMJ department had me lecture to the postgraduate students on my techniques.
Yeah.
They thought it was fascinating that you could just use your hands. And about a month ago, I lectured to the doctors at Temple University at the request of the dean of Temple University, asked me to do a series of lectures, and one of them was on that, about how to treat headaches. I personally think that dentists should be treating headaches because most people don't know that their headaches could be coming from grinding their teeth.
Sure.
Clenching and grinding. There are dentists that specialize in TMJ.
Okay.
But my belief, most of them, I don't know anyone else who does what I do. I haven't come across it. And that's why I'm grateful when I have an opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah.
I believe in non-invasive therapy. I don't want injections in my face. I grind. I've been grinding. I've been wearing a soft night guard for years and years and years. A soft, flexible night guard. Most dentists make a night guard that's hard, and they put it on the upper teeth. And I personally believe in a soft night guard for the lower teeth. And when I lectured at Temple, I said to the dean, I hope I'm not saying something that you don't teach, because I didn't want to create controversy.
Yeah.
And he said, no, not at all. He goes, I really believe in what you're saying, because most people who get a hard night guard to help them stop grinding, they take it out and throw it away because it's hard to get used to them. It's like biting on a rock when you're biting on something hard. It makes sense that it's more comfortable to bite on something soft. And so I wear a soft night guard that absorbs the pressure. It doesn't transfer the pressure. When you're wearing something hard, I feel that you're transferring the pressure. So I don't talk badly about anybody's technique. If they want to do injections, that's fine. I prefer non-invasive therapy.
So how do we get
a gentle approach?
How do we get your healing hands?
I'm not sure, because I don't have an office anymore that does that. You know, people can contact me if they have questions, and I'll be happy to try and guide them someplace. But but I think it's important for people to do this. When I was teaching at N.Y.U, the head of the oral medicine department called me into her office one day. And anytime someone calls me in somewhere, I think I'm in trouble, like a little kid, you know? I thought she was going to fire me. But she said, Jeffrey, we're underutilizing you. You should be teaching this.
Yeah.
And I would like to raise money to create a department to have a budget so you could teach this. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And, you know, so I try and get the word out when I do shows like this to tell people, because people need to be helped.
Yeah.
And as I said, there are people who are plagued with headaches. They wake up in the morning and already have a headache. And how can you face a day? How can you have a good day when your head hurts? It's hard enough if your back hurts or you have pain somewhere else in your body. But all your thoughts come from your head. So if you're starting your day with your head hurting, you're not going to have a good day. You know, and when that builds up, it leads to depression. I spent the last 20 years on the board of the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy. And they were all classically trained psychotherapists except for me. And I presented my work to them in 1999, and they accepted my work. And I've been on the board ever since. And I get to lecture to psychotherapists to teach them my techniques. You know, I actually lectured at an autism school to teach the instructors on how to handle kids with autism in a more relaxed environment.
Yeah.
So people are opening up to that, you know,
Of course.
to using energy as a healing for, you know, it's a very simple example. If you've ever been upset and someone you cared about gave you a hug and you felt better afterwards, it's because you allowed them to transfer positive energy to you and you were open to receiving it. People can do that for strangers too. It's an unusual concept where you can't go through the street hugging strangers and everybody, but there's a power through touch.
Yeah. And
when you use it properly, you can really create amazing results.
I totally agree with you. And this is going to go into our next part with your spirituality. So I believe in the secret, and what the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. Now on this program and writing for Preferred Health Magazine, we've interviewed people who have had utilized this quote to their fullest ability, whether they had GBS, they made a full recovery through the power of their minds. You know, we had Holly on this program, and she saw her little daughter. She got GBS right after she had her baby. 2 weeks later. And what got her through was looking at her newborn baby, and that pulled her through. So in your, it's amazing. So in your book, Healing Your Heart, page 157, Reprogramming Your Mind Through the Use of Affirmations, you speak about the power of positivity and overcoming hardships. Now, you were in the hospital with COVID, fighting for your life. You wrote Healing Your Heart, and you have a book, Fight the Fear, that is dedicated to self-help and courage. How did you utilize all your knowledge and your work when you were in your bed at the hospital?
That's a great question, and it's very interesting to me too. I used it to come back from a heart attack. I had 5 years ago, I had what they call a widowmaker heart attack. Very serious. It came out of nowhere. I was never sick a day in my life. The night before, I was out with the Sirius XM radio people. We were partying. I went to like 2 or 3 events. Next day, I got hit with this heart attack. And I was back on stage in 5 days performing comedy. And the owner of the club said to me, "What are you, crazy? You just had a heart attack." And I was like, "Yeah, but it's hard to get a spot here. I didn't want to lose my spot." Couldn't believe it. I'm laying there in the bed, and I had to do the same thing with COVID double pneumonia. It was a very scary time. I got it back in March, you know, when New York City was the epicenter of the pandemic.
Is that March 2019?
March 2000, March 2019, yeah.
Wow.
It's hard for me to grasp that we lost more than a year.
I know.
Yeah. The first month that it came out, I got it right away. Well, you know me, I like to be the first at everything. I don't want to wait. I got it right away. I went in with both lungs.
You're so lucky.
I'm so lucky.
So lucky to be sitting here with us.
I was sick for 2 weeks before I had to call an ambulance. I couldn't take the pain anymore. I was afraid to go to the hospital because I was in a very high risk category because of my heart condition.
Yeah.
And they were warning people to stay away from hospitals if you don't have to go. I couldn't take it. Now, a couple of lucky things happened. And it sounds weird to say that I was lucky that I had that heart attack because I had been on blood thinners for 5 years. I never stopped. And they told me that I could have stopped after a year, but I never stopped. I felt like I should stay on them. And in that time, they didn't know about the blood clotting problem. A lot of people died, including Nick Cordero, that young Broadway star, only 41 years old, who passed away from blood clots related to COVID. So I was on that. And on my 3rd day of COVID, I didn't know I had COVID. I was hoping I just had a cold. I was sneezing and coughing. And on the 3rd day, it went to my throat. I had a sore throat.
Yeah.
And I always keep, you know, as a doctor, I always keep antibiotics in the house. And I had Z-Pak, azithromycin. And I started myself on it because when I get a sore throat, it's really bad. And it's supposed to be a 5-day course. I had enough for 10 days. And I stayed on it for 10 days. And I was getting sicker and sicker, but I could still breathe, which was amazing. And I didn't realize that. I knew Z-Pak could help my throat, but I didn't realize that it was specific for your lungs. People don't know that, you know, COVID is a virus and antibiotics don't work on a virus, only bacterial. But there's such a thing as a bacterial pneumonia that comes along with this thing as well. And that's what protected me. And when I got to the hospital, I had to call an ambulance. They took me to N.Y.U. Langone, and they were using hydroxychloroquine. And that turned the corner for me. And it's too bad that they politicized that drug, because it could have saved a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But on my first day in the hospital, they were just concerned with bringing down my fever. They covered me with ice, and they had to raise my blood pressure because it was collapsing. You know, normal blood pressure is 120/80. My 80 dropped to 42. So they could hardly get a vein to start an IV. And I had to use the things that I wrote about. I had to stay positive, because when you're in a negative space, your immune system doesn't function well, and you can't fight off illness. And in a positive space, you can. And in the emergency room, they put me next to a woman who was screaming, literally screaming with every breath that she took. And as sick as I was, I had to lay there and listen to that. And it was very hard for me. And the tendency was to think, why me? Why is this happening to me, right? But the spiritual answer is, why not me? Whoever promised me that my life is supposed to be perfect and nothing's supposed to happen to me? So I had to step out of my mind, out of my own mind and thoughts, and start thinking how scared this woman must be and how much pain she must be in to be screaming with every breath. Because I was hoping that they would move me, but there was no place to put me because they were overrun with patients. They ran out of rooms. And when they x-rayed my lungs, a pulmonary specialist came and said, "I'm sorry to tell you, you have COVID double pneumonia." They were going to send me home. They were actually thinking of sending me home. And through the grace of God, they found a room for me. And they put me in this room. And I was in isolation for 2 days. But on the second day, they started me on hydroxychloroquine. And that turned the corner. And my oxygen was able to stay at 95 to 96%. But on the third day, they put me in a room with 3 other very sick men, all with the virus. And again, I had to work on controlling my mind to stay positive, because this is no joke. But they told me, I was hoping they were kidding when they told me the man in the bed next to me was from Wuhan, China. And I'm like, that can't even happen. My life is like a Woody Allen movie.
Oh my God.
And he's coughing and choking into the air with no mask, right? And I'm laying there, and the nurse tells me not to worry. And she points to a thin curtain that's hanging, like the thin curtain is supposed to protect me. Meanwhile, she's wearing like a hazmat suit with swim fins and scuba gear, but I had a thin curtain. So I had to really work on my mind. And it was at that time that Ron Bennington announced on Sirius XM radio that I was in the hospital. And I started to get hundreds and hundreds of messages from people. And I'm people that I didn't even know sometimes. And I'm a very big believer in the power of prayer and the power of thought. And when so many people are focusing their energy on you, I have to tell you how much that meant to me. I was too sick to answer anybody. I couldn't answer the messages, but just knowing that so many people were supporting me and pulling for me to get better really helped me. And kindness, I can't overstress kindness. The ambulance workers were so kind to me. One guy took my hand and he said to me, "Don't worry, you're going to be okay." He was impressed that I could get on the stretcher myself. He said most people needed to be carried on the stretcher. And the nurses, a couple of nurses came and sat on my bed. As nervous as they were literally wearing hazmat suits because we were so contagious. And they sat on my bed and they took my hand and they said, "You're going to make it. Don't worry. You're going to make it." And all those things help. I can't stress it enough. When I got out of the hospital, I did a press thing for the hospital to try to help them raise money, because I was so grateful for the care that I received. You know, those people put their lives on the line every day, you know, and it was really an amazing experience. But that's what allowed me to write this book. There's a chapter in here. It's not just about COVID. Fight the Fear is about confronting the part of your mind that tells you that you can't be successful, that you'll never achieve your dreams, that you can't make it, that you'll never get the job you want, you'll never be married, you'll never have kids, you'll never have a house of your own, you'll never have all the things that some people take for granted. And so there's a chapter in here on the heart attack, and there's a chapter on the COVID thing, chapter on how I conquered the fear of performing, of how I conquered stuttering. It's just, it's
all
a
in
whole
one,
thing,
all in one book.
all in one book, just about fighting the fear. Fear is a bully.
Yeah.
And it doesn't want you to accomplish anything. It wants you to stay in bed with the covers over your head. And
so I have a question for you, Jeffrey, if
please,
I may.
yeah, sure.
And I'm so happy that you're sitting here with us. And, you know, we wanted to reach out to Nick Cordero's wife. My question to you is, how come with the power of prayer that Nick had, how come it didn't work out for him? Do you think we all have a time where we're supposed to go? What do you think about that?
Well, I looked into that because it was very interesting to me, because some people go way too soon. And what they say is, what I was able to learn is that God is more concerned with your spirit than your physical body.
Yeah.
And sometimes he needs that spirit for another purpose. Because I'm a big believer in reincarnation.
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes little children have a power that is amazing. Like you read about these 3-year-old violin prodigies or piano prodigies, 2-year-olds who are painters, you know, things that are beyond comprehension. And it just makes sense to me that it's a carryover from a previous existence. You know, when people stop moving, when they stop being alive, the spirit has to go somewhere. You can't kill spirit, it's energy.
Yes.
And so to me, I open my mind to the concept that it's a possibility that it could go into another human being. It can't diminish you in any way to open your mind to things like that, because there's no other good answer for why so many people are lost, why there was a Holocaust, why things like that happen. You know, people use things like that to question God's existence.
Yes.
And, you know, to me, what I say to people is, well, how can it diminish you in any way to open your mind to the concept that there could be a higher power? You know, because when you think that it's you that's controlling everything in your life, then you tend to blame yourself when things don't go the way you think they should.
Yes.
And what you learn in spirituality is that everything that happens is God's will. You can't only believe in it when it's convenient. You know, so when I'm laying in the hospital, I had to tell myself, for whatever reason, this is my path right now. I can't only accept it when it feels like things are going perfectly. It's when it feels like nothing is going right, like things are horrible. That's when it's important to believe in those things. So I had to say to myself, this is my path. I can't do anything about it. All I can do is hope for the best and try to stay positive. I was telling jokes, you know, when I had the heart attack and they were putting a stent in my heart, I was still kind of awake.
Yeah.
And I'm on the operating table and I say to the surgeon, I said, I feel you in my heart, not in a romantic way, but I feel you in my heart. Because I was feeling what they were doing. They were unplugging me and I could feel it and it was uncomfortable. And he said, I'll give you more anesthetic. And later that day, he came to my room and he hugged me and he said, I want you to know you're a miracle. And I said, you're the miracle. You're the guy that saved me, you know. He went into my heart through my arm.
God bless.
Which was incredible. So again, you know, a lot of it is about positive energy. A lot of it is about luck. But no one can control what God's will is for you. When you pray, when you pray, you ask to be open to whatever God's will is for you. You know, none of us have any choice. You just have to be open to that concept. Otherwise, you tend to blame yourself. And too many people live in the past with what I could have done and what I should have done.
Yes.
And they're worrying about the future. They're living in fear of the future. And they're losing the now. They're losing today. You know, there's this great saying that yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, today is a gift, and that's why they call it the present.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
It's a present. It is true.
Nice? It's the present, and you have to be there for it.
It took a long time for me to get into the present moment. You know, I always worried about the past. I worry about the future. I still worry a little bit about the future, but I live in this moment because it can be taken away anytime. And I want to grow every minute. Right. So, you know, what was my question to you? I wanted to ask you, how did you feel when you first, because you're a father, so you saw your children, your daughters, how did it feel when you first saw them out of the hospital? For the second time where you were brushed with?
My children are my greatest gift. I couldn't let them visit me. It was too dangerous. I was sick for 2 months. It took 2 months to recover, and then I hardly left the house. And after a few months, I would visit them. I'd drive up, and we kept our masks on. Unfortunately, they have houses that have backyards. So we'd sit in the backyard, and we'd eat together. You know, you take down your mask to eat. But we didn't hug. You know, we were afraid. I think they were afraid because nobody knew. You could catch COVID twice.
Yes.
And they wanted to protect me. Now everyone's vaccinated. I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. My cardiologist told me, you're going to get a reaction anyway. You may as well wait for the one-shot thing.
Yeah.
I still had antibodies. Supposedly, the sicker you were, the longer your antibodies last. So my antibodies lasted a long time. And then on top of it, I got the vaccine. And I was sick for another 5 days.
Wow.
It was nowhere near as bad as having COVID. Believe me, I will get the shot anytime rather than get that virus again. The virus is a beast. Let me tell you, my children are my gift. You know, that's what makes me do what I do every day. You know, it's a very special thing. And I'm very grateful to my ex-wife for those children.
Yeah.
Because without her DNA, it couldn't have been those children. And I write about that too in my book.
Yeah.
People, you know, if you didn't have children together, you never have to see each other again. But if you do, too many people hate each other after they break up.
Yeah.
And it's very detrimental, and it's not good for your health. And I have a good relationship with her and her husband. And I have a very big extended family.
Yeah.
Because of the principles of spirituality that I've been able to embrace. And they really work. So when we get together, it's a very big family now, you know. And
blended family, a blended loving family.
Yeah, there's no awkwardness. We all get along, and everybody, you know, not that I go out places with them to socialize, but when we have holidays, we celebrate all together in what used to be my house. Right? It's a very nice house. It has a big backyard, and we're all together, and it's fine, you know. And my ex-wife's husband owns a gas station, and to show you how much I trust the guy, I let him do my brakes. I bring my car to him, he fixes my car, and he does my brakes. So that just shows you.
You're the best.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're the best. Jeffrey, I'm so happy to know you. I just want to touch upon one other question. I have one last question for you.
Absolutely.
Tell us about the term that you use, going to another level, and how we can use it in all aspects of our life.
You ask very good questions. Going to another level is an interesting concept that I figured out in my mind. Like when I told you, I took speech courses to give speeches while I was still stuttering very badly. And I never stuttered when I gave the speech. I went to another level. I left my body, in a sense. It's almost like when an actor gets a script and they have to become that role, and they act differently than they think they could act. Like if an actor gets a script as a murderer, he has to find that part of him that is that. If a woman gets a script as a hooker, she's got to find that part of her that is that. So when I had to do stuff like when I have to go on the red carpet and meet these huge celebrities, I could either be very nervous or I could take myself to another level where I realize that I'm okay, that they're just people and they're the same as me. Yeah. And I don't have to feel less than. They want to know me as much as I want to know them. And so going to another level means stepping outside of yourself to confront your uncomfortability. Mm-hmm. I confront my uncomfortability on a daily basis to the point where I made myself go to Japan all by myself. Just before the pandemic, I went for 2 weeks to Japan. It was the scariest thing I ever did.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
I don't speak a lot of Japanese. I studied Japanese level 1 3 times to prepare myself. And I did it, man. I have fears of being lost. Talk about fears of being lost. The Japanese subway system is the most complicated in the world, and I conquered it. I went on it every day, and I went to different cities, and I was lost every single day, but I didn't let the fear engulf me. Yeah. You know, I used the Japanese. I had one day I was stuck for an hour underground. The Japanese subways are impossible. You can't get to the street. There's 18 to 20 exits. In New York, you can easily find your way to the street when you get off the subway. Yeah. I was literally stuck for an hour until I found someone who spoke enough English that they could guide me. And I was starting to get really nervous because no matter where I went, every exit takes you to a different part of the city. but I made it. I spent 2 weeks in Japan. I had a great time. I found spiritual meetings. I did 2 comedy shows while I was there. I found a place, English-speaking people, and it was amazing. People from Scotland, Ireland, England, well, you know, the UK, and I had an amazing time. Spent 14 hours on a plane, which would usually freak me out, but it's the power of the mind.
So awesome.
And so it's about going to another level and not allowing yourself to be limited by your fears. You know, the only limitations are the ones that we create for ourselves. Yep. You know, there's an abundance in the universe. There are many things. The way I think of it, I'm in the airport, millions of people are traveling. If they can do it, I have to do it too.
Yeah.
I can't say, oh, I'm nervous to travel and not go anywhere. So I did it. I went to Europe 2 times by myself. I always go alone because it's hard to get somebody to travel with you and do the things that you want to do.
I know, it's so true. I go out to dinner by myself because I just don't want to deal with anybody else.
I just don't let it stop me. I do what I want to do. As you know, I'll end on this thing. I heard this great saying once. It says, courage is not a lack of fear. Courage is having the fear and doing it anyway. And so when I do these things, yeah, I'm nervous and I may experience fear, but like fear is a bully. So I'm like, F you to the fear. I don't let the fear stop me. You have to stand up to a bully. You have to stand up to fear. Yeah. And again, that's why I wrote this book. And it came out as a #1 release in 4 different categories: medicine and psychology, group therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, which to me was the most important because that's about changing the way you think.
Yes.
And adult children of alcoholics. And, you know, it's the compilation of many years of study. So I hope that your people will check it out. They're both on Amazon. I call them my happiness series.
Yes.
Because it's about learning to change the way you think. And getting a dog that could sit in lotus position.
That's right. I can't even get my dog to sit down. Please head over to Amazon.com to check out these amazing books. I just want to get the names of them really quick just so I can reiterate.
Sure. It's Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness. And the other one is called Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way. And this guy is on a journey. He's on the road, and there's a sign that says road closed, but there's 2 angels that are removing that sign.
That's so amazing. That's so amazing.
I created those images, and I had a great artist who created those covers. So I hope people will take the time to check them out, and I hope it helps somebody.
I'm sure it will. Jeffrey, you're amazing. Thank you so much for making a difference with us, and just so excited to know you now.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It takes one empath to know another one, right? So I thank you so much for having me on. You're a great host and a great interviewer, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Making a Difference is sponsored by Preferred Health Magazine. Please visit www.preferredhealthmagazine.com today and subscribe.